Now let me present you our speakers first. Today we will have 3 speakers, 2 senior RDA members and an early career bursary. Hilary Hanahoe is the director at Trust IT Services Limited, an international marketing and research organization specialized in fostering information and communication technology solutions across Europe and globally. She is specialized in the definition and execution of digital marketing, communications and outreach strategies on a pan-European and international level. Hilary is the coordinator of the RDA Europe communications activities and is a member of the RDA Global Secretariat, where she is responsible for RDA communications and plenary meeting coordination. Francoise Genova is an astronomer. She was the director of Strasbourg Astronomical Data Center, a pioneer center for the sharing of scientific data from 1995 to 2015. She has been one of the founding parents of the International Virtual Observatory, which defines the astronomical interoperability framework. She has been involved in the RDA and in the RDA Europe projects from the beginning and is currently the co-chair of the RDA Technical Advisory Board. Paola Masuzzo is an Italian soon-to-graduate PhD student at the Computational Omics and Systems Biology Group at Ghent University in Belgium. She has a background in biomedical engineering and is currently busy with bioinformatics research around cell migration data. During her PhD, she has developed a genuine interest for open science, especially in terms of open data and open source. She is one of the lucky RDA Early Career Program winners, and thanks to this, she has had the privilege to attend the RDA Plenary in Tokyo. In her presentation, she will give a short overview on open science and the importance of research data, and she will then report on her personal experience at the plenary. Hilary, do you want to start?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Not sure why my camera is not working, but it was, but we start again. Decided to freeze. Anyway, while I'm getting the camera to work, this is typical technological problems. To understand the people on the call, I was wondering if we could do a quick poll. As Catherine said, it is anonymous, but we were wondering, did you attend the plenary in Tokyo? Or was it your first plenary? So you see the answers. You can either not vote, or you could say yes, that it was your first plenary. You attended several plenaries. You didn't go to Tokyo, which we would assume many of you haven't. That's why you're calling in to listen to us today. Or you haven't actually ever attended a plenary. And we hope that after today's webinar, you will understand why you would like to come along. I'm going to try starting my webcam again, but it doesn't seem to want to say hello. So, of course, it worked in the test. It never does. I'm not sure I can do anything about that. I'll try for the question and answer time, which is probably more important. So I'm going to give you an introduction. Let me see. So let me see the answer to the poll. For those of you, there are 9 participants on the call. What I can see at the moment is that many of you have attended the majority have attended a previous plenary, and then some haven't attended a plenary yet. Okay. So my presentation, what I wanted to do was give an introduction, of course, in the beginning as to why do we organize plenary meetings and perhaps why should you attend, okay, and then specifically in Tokyo, what happened, who was there, and of course, where do we go next so that you can plan to come and join us in one of those. Essentially, what are plenary meetings? Well, I mean, if you know about the Research Data Alliance, you know that much of the activity, because it's an international organization, because it has members in 104 countries all over the world, because it has over 70 different groups active, and because it has nearly 4,000 members, you can imagine that much of the activity that we do is virtual activity, and via the web platform the members interact, etc. So every 6 months we hold plenary meetings, which are the sort of physical face-to-face, the face-to-face activities for our members. And of course we usually our average, shall we say, participation to those is about 450 people. So about 10-15% of our membership come to those. And basically the physical meetings where we bring together this unique community, because we have a really unique community of data science professionals, and we also, IT experts, discipline focused researchers, and the point of these meetings is 2.5 to 3 days where they help move the community forward to create tangible deliverables that improve the data sharing across the disciplines, across technologies and across countries. And they work towards our vision of data sharing without boundaries, if you like. So the heart of these plenary meetings really are working meetings, okay, of the working groups, the interest groups, and then people who have new ideas or have not yet got into RDA, or see that there isn't a group that focuses on an area of their interest, can propose a birds of a feather, which Francoise will mention a little bit afterwards. And of course a very important part of our plenary meetings are the outputs and the adoption cases that we present. At every meeting there are a presentation of those that have been finalised, the outputs that are finalised, and some stories on adoption of previous outputs. So, why would you attend? Well, in a nutshell, there are many reasons, and many of you, I'm sure, who are working in this field have your own events that are specific to your activity, so you know what a face-to-face meeting brings to you. But of course, and all these virtual meetings that we have, even this lovely webinar, are perfect and fine, but you can't beat interaction and talking to people and really sitting down and working out problems. So exchanging knowledge, sharing the discoveries and discussing barriers and potential solutions, and for getting new ideas and things. You can learn, of course, about new trends and strategies and developments and directions and policies, because RDA is a unique place for that, because we don't just talk about one particular area. There are activities that go across many different boundaries, many different data sharing challenges in different disciplines, multidisciplinary. Of course, you expand your network. You can meet new people who are really committed and passionate about solving these data challenges. And you also can make a contribution to the acceleration of data and the infrastructure development on a global basis, because it is truly a global endeavor. And in fact, the worldwide expansion of it you can kind of see in this slide, which is I titled "Round the World in so far 9 plenaries." So Tokyo was the 7th, and I wanted to show you this slide to show you okay, you can see every 6 months. You can see also that we do really change regions. So many of them, of course, have taken place in Europe and in the US. Tokyo was our first Asian plenary. We change regions every 6 months, and you will also, what I wanted to highlight was the text in orange, in fact, that the evolution of our plenaries. So we started in March 2013 with the launch, and then we were building up, shall we say, a group of partnerships around the world. Then we really felt we were a community already a year later, and then we started to reap the fruits because we had the first outputs. We had our first adoption stories in March 2015. We had a very big focus on climate change and enterprise engagement due to the COP21 climate change conference in Paris, which was the same location as our plenary. And then we went, as I said, for our first time to Tokyo, where our theme was making data sharing work in the era of open science. And I'll talk about plenary 8 and plenary 9 at the end of my talk, just to whet your appetites for the next 2 plenaries. So if you weren't in Tokyo, what did you miss, or what happened? And if you were in Tokyo, here's some sort of shall we say, in a nutshell, a few notes for you and a few points. So basically, these numbers, what do they say? Well, we had, to try and sum it up, shall we say, because as I said, the core part of the plenaries are the working group meetings, of which we had 8, the interest group meetings, of which we had 25, and then the birds of a feather meetings, of which there were 10, and they are the parts where the people sit down, they've exchanged emails, they've had teleconferences throughout the year, and then they sit down and progress the work in a very tangible way. We also have joint working and interest group meetings, and they're very important because if you look at the list of over 70 different groups that we have, you can see there are some overlaps, or there's some more than overlaps. There are some important points where these groups should meet and exchange information, and what better place when they're all in the same venue. We had about 5 plenary sessions. As I said, our plenary sessions are very much dedicated to the presentation of our outputs at that milestone and of adoption stories, and you can see them on the left side of the screen in the recommendations and the outputs that were presented there in this round. And we had 11 adoption presentations, which is quite significant. In fact, those adoption stories bring us to probably around 30, and our next, shall we say, big communication and dissemination endeavour and drive will be to try and capture these stories and bring them to, as we have an outputs booklet which is now being updated and will be online soon. We also will have an adoption stories area where we would like to show you some very concrete, diverse implementations and testing of the outputs. But we also had organizational meetings. This I highlighted slightly in case there are any of you on the webinar who might be interested to become an organizational member. RDA has organizational members who pay an annual subscription fee, and while becoming an individual member is free, organizational members have different benefits, have different input and different insight into RDA, and they always have their meetings during the plenaries as well. And we also have an RDA for newcomers, so when any of those of you who are on the call have never been to a plenary meeting and are thinking of coming for one, usually the day before the official plenary starts, we have a newcomers meeting which gives you a little bit of an insight into what RDA is about and also what you can expect at that plenary meeting, so it's useful to come to that. As I showed on the previous slide, we had 373, oh there's my camera, we had 373 attendees, which for us is about it's a good number. We had 700 in Paris. I'll show you some numbers before so you get a feel for the size of the plenaries, but I think 373 was a good number. As I said, it was our first in Asia, so it was hard for us to make some sort of an estimate on who would be there. We had which would only be normal, about 30% of Japanese, and we estimate that around 32% of our participants were actually, it was their first time at a plenary. In terms of gender balance, because that's always important, there's no gender balance today, by the way, it's all women, but normally our gender balance is more or less what you would see on the screen now, so about 70-30, and that stayed in Japan. The types of organizations, people are often interested in this. Our largest, and the breakdown of the participants in Tokyo follows very much the breakdown of the percentage of breakdown of our members. So our biggest grouping, shall we say, of our members and in Tokyo were academic and research representatives. Of course, it's all a bit subjective, this, as to how a person classifies themselves, but we had small number of press and media. We were very pleased actually with our enterprise participation because in that would have been a lot of local participants, and that was quite significant for us, though our previous participation was much larger in terms of that. So just if it was interesting to see that actually having it's an interesting statistic that once you hold a plenary in a country, not just a region, the growth of that membership grows. And that was one of our objectives, of course, was to increase interest and make it really truly global and increase our regional representation in not just Japan but also in Asia. So actually now, with the growth in our membership, Japan has now become the 7th most represented country in RDA. And the next slide gives you more detail on it, but just to show you, you see, so if you look at the numbers of the participants over the things, that our highest was indeed over 600 participants in Paris, with Tokyo and San Diego being more or less on an even keel in terms of numbers and regional representation. But the point of this slide was not to give you, go into detail on the numbers, but was to show you how varied indeed our how global the participation is. And so for those of you who are working in these areas and who are interested in knowing more, but also expanding your network or identifying people, it is truly the place to be in terms of global and meeting global participants and coming to the plenaries. These are just a few pictures of what happened from Tokyo, but there are plenty. In fact, if you visit our website under the plenary meetings, the past plenaries section, you can go into and see, you can download, access the presentations, you can see the photo gallery, and we've just received, so they'll be uploaded in the next few days, the streaming. We only stream the plenary sessions. It's impossible for us at the moment, with the cost and the technologies and things, for us to stream the breakout sessions. That would be, we know that there's interest in that, but it's very, very difficult. We run anything between 7 to 12, 13 breakout sessions at the same time, so you can imagine what would be involved to try and stream them. But we do provide remote access. So again, if you aren't able to come to one of our future meetings, and we hope that's not the case, you can participate remotely by requesting to access that meeting. Personally, I felt that Japan was, I've been to them all, of course. I'm, as Catherine said in the introduction, I am personally responsible for and the coordinator of the plenary meeting, so I've been to them all, and I found I had my own set of objectives and expectations for Tokyo. I found it a very productive meeting. I find them all, but they all have different, they have different sizes, we have different scope, we have different objectives for them. This, as I said, was a bit of a question mark because it was a new region. RDA is funded at the moment by Australia through the government, by the Americans through the National Science Foundation, and by Europe through a European Commission funded project. So it was not a done deal that there would be like a lot of interest in Japan, and indeed there was. I saw a lot of results in terms of new groups and many more recommendations and outcomes coming out. As I said, we had the presentation of 7 outcomes then. I heard many stories about bilateral collaborations, people saying that they had got together, not just under the RDA umbrella, to create new groups or to continue work there, but also to do activities that are still very, very important to what RDA is trying to achieve in the breaking down these barriers. I felt a lot of passion and enthusiasm in the corridors. I got a lot of positive feedback in terms of activities and concrete work done. And I listened to a really fantastic range of adoption stories, which for me always brings sort of butterflies to my stomach and warms my heart, if I can say it like that, because that's what it's all about. We are building these small bridges and we want to see them adopted. We want to see them taken up. We want to see feedback coming back in so that we can improve them and do more work. So I have a very, very, very positive feeling about Japan, and I know that Francoise will, from the Technical Advisory Board point of view, will give you more detail into that. So before I hand over to Francoise, as I said, I just give 1 minute on the next plenary because it's a little unusual, this one. It's going to be held during the week of the 11th to the 17th of September in Denver, Colorado, as you can see. And we will have a 2.5 day Research Data Alliance plenary meeting. But before that, there's SciDataCon, which is the biannual conference organised by ICSU, World Data System and CoData. And then the centrepiece on the 14th of September is the International Data Forum, which will be a day dedicated to various different very high-level speakers and interactive sessions on data and data sharing and all the different challenges from ethics, privacy, all these different areas that are of strong interest to us all. You can, of course, participate all week. You can participate just to the RDA plenary meeting, but I hope that many of you will really consider strongly coming there with us. And of course, just to touch on Europe, because we haven't yet agreed where the 10th plenary meeting will be, though it will not be neither in the US nor in Europe, as we will move region, but the one in April 2017, we already know it's taking place in Barcelona at the Barcelona Sands Hotel from the 5th to the 7th of April. And usually there are some pre-events on the 3rd and the 4th, so watch out for the news on that. I understand that the questions will come all at the end, so I'm going to hand over to Francoise. Thank you very much.
So it seems it's my turn, and well, Hilary said already many things about the very good things which happened in Tokyo. So as I am a member of the Technical Advisory Board of the RDA, I have a point of view which is more about the bottom-up activities, and this is this point of view which will be in the view graphs. So just to remind everybody, those of you who already attended know that RDA is a bottom-up organization and that topics are proposed by the community. So there are groups, and I will recall what the different types of groups are. And then specific to each plenary, there are what we call bird of a feather groups, which are temporary to initiate discussion, which can lead to propose a group. So the working groups, they work very hard because they have only 18 months to produce outcomes, which are real deliverables, which are implementable. So this is why we are so concentrated on outputs and adoption story. It's really, as Hilary said, the core goal of RDA to provide this kind of things. There are many possible topics for outcomes, and when we have a look at the outputs which were discussed during the plenary, Hilary gave you the list. There are things which are rather on the sociological side, organizing communities, disseminating knowledge, such as the summer schools. There are things which can be much more technical. There are outputs which are around disciplinary topics, and there are things which are tools for everybody. So the topics such as the list of outputs around the publishing data groups. There are several publishing data groups. These are typical of tools which can be used by many people. I see in the list that there are people from national data services, and I'm sure they are particularly interested in this kind of outputs. But the others are good also. The interest groups are more here to communicate, to have communication between people and to coordinate some activities. So they also produce products. We have the official outcomes, but there are also products which can be very useful and which come from the interest groups, and we are working on making them very visible because they can be useful for very many people. The interest groups remain in operation as long as they remain active, which is not the same thing for the working groups. So the bird of a feathers, they are really temporary. The idea is that if you have an idea of a new topic, you would really like this to be discussed and tackled in the RDA. You propose a bird of a feather topic, and then you get a session, and you can find colleagues you don't know to share, who share this interest, and you can think about producing an interest group or a working group just to tackle the work. So I think it's important to have in mind the list of groups. As you see, there are more and more groups. Those of you who attended previous of these meetings, I've seen a list of groups around 50, 60 groups, and there are more and more. As Hilary explained, we have seen several proposals emerging from this particular plenary, including working groups. As I told you, a working group is something which is demanding because you have a short time to produce something which is implementable. And I will take the example of the agriculture domain to show you how things have built up through groups and through results. There are, of course, many other topics. Some of them are domain-oriented. Others are around the community needs, for instance, the summer schools, which were discussed in the outcomes session. There are all these groups which work about reference and sharing. There is also a partnership group on different topics. And in those cases, there are, for instance, all the publishing data groups, which are producing their outputs now, and the repository audit and certification group, which is also producing its outputs now. All this is rather on the sociological and how to do things. There are groups, of course, which are much more oriented towards technical aspects, some of them deep technical aspects, and there are all these groups which are listed as base infrastructure. Many of them already produce their outputs, and now we see how their outputs are adopted. So I know that every time we show this kind of list, people get frightened. And if you have been attending a meeting, probably you saw many, many things and you had problems to find out what was of interest for you. So there is lots of diversity, and it's built in the fact that the RDA is a bottom-up organization. So people bring topics of interest. But this diversity is something which makes the wealth of the RDA, and it's not chaos, it's not a problem, it's the wealth. The evolution of a landscape, which is sometimes rather quick because we see sometimes several groups showing up during a plenary. We follow that at the Technical Advisory Board. There are some bottom-up clustering of groups. I will show you examples in a minute. We have meetings with the chairs. The Technical Advisory Board meets the chairs, and the chairs meet among themselves twice a year. And as Hilary explained, there are many joint sessions on topics of common interest. These sessions are especially important because if you imagine, for instance, the technical groups and the disciplinary groups. The disciplinary groups are in the RDA because they want to discuss their own needs in terms of data sharing. But they are also in the RDA because they want to get something from the people who know better the technical aspects. So they can get proposals, possible solutions to their questions, and they bring the disciplinary group in turn, they bring specifications to the technical work. And so this is what we try to organize better and better, to try to have this flow of information between the different kinds of groups so that they take the best from being in the RDA. An example of grouping of working groups and interest groups, these are the very first outcomes of the RDA and an idea of the cycle of data, the data life cycle. So there is a group called the Data Fabric Interest Group, which is trying to gather information from many different groups present in the RDA to provide a list of common solutions and common building blocks and how to make all these blocks work together. So it's not here good to have the details of all the groups which appear here, but it's just to see that some people are working, again, bottom up, to try to put the findings together. There is also a group of groups which are working on publication of data, and they have an interest group. There is a kind of publishing cluster which is done mainly in collaboration with the World Data System. And these groups are producing their outputs, and it's another kind of grouping of groups which deal with topics which are close together. So I take the special example of agriculture in RDA, as I told you. So agriculture has been present in the RDA from the very first plenary in Göteborg. And they decided that it was a good place to meet because it was a neutral place, a place which was welcoming global endeavors. So they created very quickly an interest group on agricultural data. Then they decided more or less at the same time that it was a good place to discuss interoperability linked to an international project which is called the Global Wheat Initiative. And so they set up a working group which is here to discuss interoperability with wheat data. So they were producing outcomes now. They have been organizing pre-plenary events. They organized one in Paris. They organized another one in Tokyo, which was very well attended with around 60 people, including private sector. And their successful wheat initiative was shown as an outcome plus an adoption story during the plenary. They now come with new working groups proposal about agri-semantics and about the rice data interoperability. The success of the wheat data interoperability endeavor made them think that they could apply the same model to other species of importance, and it's particularly good to see rice appearing in Asia, of course. The working group outputs, you can find them on the website. There are all the outputs, and you can go, for instance, to the wheat interoperability data. They have interoperability guidelines, ontologies, and use cases. And they also have a link to guidelines for adoption. So you can find lots of information. This is true for this group, but this is also true for others. If you want to know more about the outputs which were discussed in Tokyo, it's good that you go to the website and you find more information. So the new topics, it's not bad to have a look at the bird of a feathers because they may be the topics of tomorrow. There is, some of them are already with cases, proposals for working groups or interest groups, but there will be groups tackling several of these topics in the coming interrupts. So if you're interested, you may want to join at this early stage. So again, then the plenary and the next steps, the call for sessions, since here we are in hands-on, what do you do if you want to propose a new team? There will be a call for sessions later this month. All the RDA members will receive the call for sessions. And you have to understand that we ask a relatively detailed case for each proposals for a session so that we know the context and the objectives and what will be in the sessions themselves to help, this is venues to help the people who attend the plenary to choose which session they will attend. So I think now it's Paola's turn.
Yes. I'll start my webcam. Okay, we have heard from Hilary and Francoise a great introduction on RDA and what its mission are. So what I would like actually to share today with you is a bit my experience at the last plenary, RDA plenary in Tokyo, and especially from an early career researcher point of view. If you are wondering where the title of this talk comes from, this is actually one of the most famous quotes from Sherlock Holmes. And I realized after attending the plenary in Tokyo that this was a great example to convey the message that nobody can draw any conclusions, nobody can actually formulate statements anymore if not enough data information are being collected. That's what Sherlock Holmes always used to do to actually solve his cases. So what I would like to do today is to summarize some of the key messages that were discussed at the plenary in Tokyo. So first of all, why is it that we have to talk about open science? Why there is this need? The fact that research data should be treated as first-class citizens in science, why this is so important. And then I would like to present you a bit of overview on the early career program at the RDA, how you can apply and what can you do for it. So one of the first questions that actually were asked and tried to answer at the plenary in Tokyo was indeed why is it that we have to talk about open science while open science should be open by definition, because it's a cumulative process, as we always build on the results that other people have achieved somewhere in the past, or even ourselves, goes through peer review, because once we arrive at some conclusions, we seek out for scientific quality control in the community from our peers. And should concern knowledge sharing, because as researchers we do commit to share what we have understood with our own research in order to address the societal and the challenges in general of our time. But at a certain point we might realize that this is really not the case, and that's actually what has happened a bit during the course of my PhD. Just think of the fact that subscription to journals just keep rising all the time. So especially for some parts of the world, access to knowledge can be very expensive. And the fear to share is still a reality. It's a bit sad to say that, but it's very true. Too often, if you look at some published results, both source data or software code or metadata are not available, which of course does nothing than improving this reproducibility crisis that science is facing nowadays. So if you might wonder if that's it and there's not much we can do about it, well, this is not the case, because at the plenary in Tokyo there was a sort of, I would say, a message of hope that actually this is the perfect time to go for open science, because we are in the internet era, so a lot of things can now happen. So the way we should do open science can be looked at different perspectives. It should be open in the way we produce knowledge, and this of course can boost both collaborations and creativity, because this means that more people join forces towards the achievement of a specific goal, and also to build much more efficiently on work that has already done in the past. But open also as in open access, so open in the way we have access to this knowledge, so that everybody has the right and to have access in a free manner to this knowledge. And this also will enable to maximize research efforts of individual units, of individual people. And the third point, which is something that, of course, the RDA plenary in Tokyo tried to stress as much as possible, is that open science should be as open for anyone to have access to use, but also to reuse research data. And with this, I would like to talk a bit about why is it that we should give first-class citizens' rights to research data. If you think that data leads to information and then to knowledge, and then the more knowledge you gather, the higher the chances that you can come up with more wisdom, or if you want to more scientific principles, then it becomes clear that data sharing is essential to advance society, to meet the challenges of our time. But of course, if research data are not seen as really first-class citizens in science, then talking about data sharing doesn't make any sense at all. So giving full rights to data would mean, first of all, that if you look at the equation of open data, making the data available is only half of it. The other half concerns intelligent access and also interoperability. Because it's not all important that the data are out there, it's important that people have the necessary infrastructure and the meanings to have access to those data. Research data must also be accompanied by metadata, otherwise published results are not interpretable in a unique and unambiguous manner. So, and then there also has to be a way to consider research data as a unique, persistent, and citable products of a research cycle. Only if these things happen, then research data can be used to actually transform and advance society. And this was one of the strongest, I think, messages that I've heard at the last plenary in Tokyo. And I also realized that while attending the plenary, the RDA is exactly the perfect place for this to happen. Because as I heard during the newcomer meeting, RDA wants to build the social and technical bridges to make data sharing happen in science. And I think these two words, indeed social and technical, are very important to try to understand what is the mission of RDA and all the people that work for it. So with this, I would like to talk a bit about the Early Career program, which has given me a great opportunity to join the plenary in Tokyo. So what does RDA do for you if you apply to the program? Well, it covers your travel and your accommodation cost. I had a great, amazing time in Tokyo during the last RDA. Of course, you gain visibility and you can network a lot because it's fully crazy of people from all over the world, from very, very different disciplines. So it's very enriching. And of course, you can have a full, deep first approach with research data world and all the initiatives that are inside the RDA. It asks you for something back in return, not too much, very little compared to what you can gain from it. You're supposed to support the activities of interest group, working groups, or birds of feathers, as we have just heard the distinctions between these from Francoise. Of course, you are assigned to support these activities in relation to your research interest and your expertise as well. For example, in my case, because I am involved, I'm doing a PhD in biomedical sciences, I was assigned to an interest group of health data and a working group on data citation. So it was very interesting to actually see some action on, not just talks, which of course are always great, but indeed people hands-on brainstorming and thinking of real challenges and what the technical solutions for those could be. And then you have to write a blog to share your experience, which is then published on the RDA website. And here I've just put the link if you have any desire of reading mine, which, by the way, reports on Sherlock Holmes again. So in interest of time, I cannot show you both the interest group and working group I was working with and I'm still working with. So I decided to just summarize on a few key points on the health data challenges interest group. Because it concerns clinic data and it's something that's becoming to be very close to my heart more and more these days. These are unique data because they're both very complex and because of course there are a lot of privacy issues that need to be addressed. And the truth nowadays is that with the techniques available in preclinical and clinical research, a huge amount of data is collected, but actually a very small portion of them is being mined and analyzed. So in a way, if we could find a way to make this data shareable between different research institutions, between different laboratories, hospitals, and so on, we could apply knowledge discovery techniques and data mining techniques that could enable, in part, in silico drug development, or at least to speed up this process, and also clinical trials to have a much bigger impact. But then if you think that I just mentioned the research data should be treated as first-class citizens in science, thus having their own full rights as an entity. Of course, you can imagine that patients do have their own rights as well. So what came out as the major concern in this during this meeting around the challenges of health data is that to find a balance between the patient's rights and the data rights is a bit difficult. It's crucial, but it's very tricky to obtain. And one of the solutions, at least that we are starting thinking about to address these challenges, is to change the way informed consent is implemented right now. Because what we need is something that is dynamic and long-term, not only to have health data being used for research purposes, but also to enable dynamic reuse in time in the future, which is extremely important as new data mining or knowledge discovering techniques are being validated and implemented. So with this, I think I covered pretty much all the points that I had in mind. I just have to, of course, thank very warmly RDA for the great opportunity I was given. And we heard at the very beginning that a couple of people have not attended any plenary yet, so I warmly recommend you to apply for the next program and join the next plenary. Thank you.